Application of biostrip till in no-till organic, and any ideas you have on that or kind of mixes that you see would be working, or any desire to try it. Thanks.
Using biologicals in the strip till?
No, in terms of planting like a strip of cereal rye and then 2 strips of legumes, or so using precision RTK to plant strips of different covers.
I'm really curious about it.
I would give it a try, go with a small scale. I planted soybeans with my corn this last year. I put in about a pound. It ended up a pound per acre. I think, we actually, our youngest son and I, we dug up a few bean plants, and there were nodulation there. They were viable. They were nice and pink inside. I think if I had to do it again, I probably would put in more soybeans. And I think Will had referenced that earlier, make sure that, if corn is kind of your primary, just maybe increase the population a little bit. I did 32,000 of corn and a couple thousand of beans, but just another thought.
Yeah, I see it as being a hybrid system where we can kind of get both the best of both worlds as far as weed control in the row and then some nitrogen production.
Will, on your 2 questions, on your cowpeas, you planted corn, did cowpeas make any seed? And the vegetable, you said you're mowing it, you're just mowing it off like a flail mower and leave it lay?
Yeah, so the question was whether the cowpeas made any seed and what I did with the red clover. I used iron and clay cowpeas, and they did not make seed. They had pods, but no viable seed at combine. Now that I got a steel corn head, and that was kind of a pain. If I got into some really thick cowpeas, they didn't want to feed through the corn head really well. And I think if I had poly snouts, that wouldn't be a problem at all. And yes, with the one-cut clover, I'm just flail mowing that.
I was wondering if you could each talk about whether you've had any problems with incorporating the residue afterwards, or what you've used to do that.
So we use, for full cultivation on our farm, we have 3 implements. We have a disc, Reuben, Lemkin 9, and a turbo till. We utilize that Reuben a lot more. The first time we heard about it was when we heard Gary Zimmer talk about using, I think he did Reuben 12 at that point. And that we're able to incorporate really heavy cover into shallow. And whenever we try and incorporate our cover, we try and put it into a really shallow layer. And we feel like the Lemkin Reuben 9 has really been useful for us on the farm for incorporating it. When we have problems is when we're impatient and want to get in there sooner than when we should. Or if it's been really wet, so this fall was challenging for us. We had, I think, 15 inches of rain over 2 weeks, and that sort of messed up a lot of harvest and any kind of cover crop or tillage.
I'm using a Howard rotavator. It pretty much chops everything up.
I haven't really incorporated any tillage. I've came back with the drill, the 1590. After beans, soybeans, I planted alfalfa and oats, and it was chopped off. And so yeah, I guess I haven't done any incorporation of the tillage or residue.
My residue is all out there yet too. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put corn in. I was wondering if anybody tried a flame weeder, full flaming, and then go in there and plant corn and just flame out the rows. If that'll work or not. Just trying to no-till into my bean stubble. Has anybody ever tried doing that with a flamer? Just flaming? I guess we'll try it the first time then. Yes?
We had a flamer this spring. if you've got residue on the ground, a flamer makes a big, big fire.
That's what I was gonna mention to Aaron or whoever was gonna do their flaming after they roller crimped. I heard it makes a lot of smoke, yeah.
Do either of you have anything to say about incorporating residue?
I think that we use some, turbo till, vertical till. Oh, it's not working. We use some sort of vertical tillage as well, and we've never seen issues with, even though it's a lot of biomass, by the time, you know, it does a good job suppressing. Now, if Jeff, you've observed the same thing. By the time you reach the fall, you know, you can go in and you pull out that mat, and it just kind of falls apart in your hands. So it's not like you're incorporating that high C to N stock or straw right at harvest. I mean, it's already starting to break down through the season, so it's not as difficult as you'd think.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, the material is, you can incorporate it any way you want. Anything will do it. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's already partially decomposed, and yeah, it's not an issue. If you want to incorporate it shallow, you can disc it, you can moldboard plow it, chisel through it, anything will go through it. It's pretty straightforward by that point in time.
I've got a question for Megan. With the strip tilling, you mentioned you planted sunflower into that. Have you tried that with corn yet?
We haven't tried it with corn. We haven't tried it with corn. We want to, and I think that's in our future. Sometimes trying it, strip tilling into a living cover takes some small trials to convince everyone that it will work. But we want to do corn strip tilling into the clover or into vetch. So we're talking about doing some vetch on the farm. We did seed some vetch, but the fall was pretty much awful, so we don't think we're going to get a stand of vetch at all. And then talking about incorporating a heavy cover, we've had it where we put down our 2.5 to 3 bushels of rye, and then we had a contract or something change in our rotation, and we had to put that rye under as a living green cover. Don't let it get higher than your knee, because it's just pretty much awful to try and incorporate afterwards. So we had some troubles with that.
On your crimson, when are you planting that, at what rate?
We planted it the year before in the fall typically, and I think we're going pretty heavy at like 80 or 90 pounds. I don't remember. We're going really heavy because our falls are not always reliable, so we err on the side of caution and just put more on. No, we haven't tried crimping the clover. Maybe we'll try it this year.
Do you feel as though there's any difference when you're tilling the soil or leaving that residue on top with your carbon-nitrogen ratio and tying up carbon?
I guess I would echo Megan that and this is where hopefully some of our models allow us to make a call, because I think it's more of an issue with tying up nitrogen and incorporation if you have to make a call after it's knee-high or at the boot stage. I mean, that's already the seed-end ratio is high, and that's just a disaster. I mean, you kind of have to just scrap the season, I think, at that point and put in a cover crop. But we haven't, and Leah might be able to talk about this as well. That's one of the reasons why we started this rotation trial. But in any of our fields where we've followed rolled rye, you know, I don't think we've seen any yield drags. But that too is strategizing your rotation. But I think oftentimes after we do rolled rye, we often do spring seeded alfalfa as part of a rotation with oat. But I don't think I don't know, Leah, if you've seen an issue from this past year with any of the other crops, but I just think it's so decomposed at that time, any of the below ground Root matter is already fairly decomposed, that we don't see a lot of, I haven't noticed a lot of carryover effect.
No, we haven't noticed any problems either with that. It's a non-issue. When we leave it on top, but when we come through like the following spring or in the fall, I mean, we don't have a problem with any of that.
But I mean, the same year, if you incorporated, like we was talking, if it's laying there and you grew it this year, if you wanted to incorporate it instead of rolling it.
Oh.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you're gonna, depending on how quickly you get it.
You're talking about letting the rye get 6 feet or 7 foot tall.
No, you want to get it when it's shorter.
Oh, when it's short, yeah, that's not a problem.
If you do get it taller, then you've got a problem with tie. Okay, that was my
Yeah,
question.
yeah. You would if you left it get really tall and then incorporate it, especially with a crop like corn. I don't know if you'd see it as much with beans, because beans will fix nitrogen, but certainly with corn, if you got a lot of biomass like wheat or rye or something, and then come in with corn, oh yeah, you're going to take it in the seat of the pants. Yeah, that's going to be a challenge then.
Well, if it does get 5, 6 feet tall, you can still moldboard plow it, and that can pretty well roll it under. I've seen better weed control out of the no-till, and then incorporated rye, and then no rye.
Can you guys just go down the line and kind of give what kind of rotations you are running crop-wise and how many years? Like corn, beans, whatever.
We typically have, we have a really diverse crop mix because of the vegetables in rotation. So it's typically a corn, dry bean, and then sometimes we have to follow that dry bean with a soybean. We don't like doing that. Then a vegetable, back to corn, and then probably potatoes, and then back to corn. It's a really fairly robust rotation that we try not to just do a crop following like a corn following corn. So I'm sorry, it's a vague answer, but we try and have a robust rotation. And then if we have a corn one year, our cover crop mix that next fall, and then the next spring, we try and make it a mix that is not prominent of the previous crop. So if it's a corn and we're going to put a cover crop mix, we try not to have a large number of grasses in that mix. We try and make it a more legume-based mix, unless the next year we're putting in a legume, and we try and adjust our mix that way. So we're trying to think, for us, our season isn't just our growing season. We think of it as the spring cover crop season, our summer crop, and then the fall cover crop season. So we're trying to incorporate that cover crops into our rotation thoughts.
We primarily grow corn, soybeans, and small grains, and in the past, it's always been corn, soybeans, and oats, wheat, or rye. But on the farms where we're doing more no-till, that's got two problems. So, like I showed, on a late corn harvest, then you get a really bad stand of rye. So that leads to trouble with the soybeans. And then when we roller crimp the rye, we get about an 85% kill. And, some of that rye will germinate that fall and come up and be a weed in my wheat crop. So I'm thinking about changing my rotation around a little bit to be something along the lines of corn, small grains, and then that'll give me, I can get some manure in there, I can get a legume cover crop or something after the small grains to get my rye in a timely manner, and then soybeans. And so I've got a 3-crop, 4-year rotation, and always ahead of corn, I have 1 year of just cover crop fallow, which has been primarily clover and alfalfa.
The caution I'd give there, Will, and we'll address this in a talk tomorrow about disease management, is that corn and a cereal grain are both grasses. So we try not to do that because it can increase fusarium, which is one of the biggest risks of growing a food-grade cereal grain. So there may be, and it'd be interesting to ask that question tomorrow. We have a pathologist that works on organic cereal grains from Cornell, if we can use cover crops or something to help break up that cycle even further. But it fits well in terms of trying to strategize our cover crops, but I'm just a little concerned about following a cereal grain with corn from the fusarium aspect.
As far as any rotation, I'll be honest, we don't have anything. You know, I guess our whole goal here is, you know, we're trying to farm with nature, and I guess whatever card we're dealt, we're going to deal with that. I think one thing earlier today in the in Rick's discussion, you know, you talk about the soil health principles, and one of the other things that was not on there was the number 5, and that's the integration of cattle. And you know, our neighbor, you know, we don't have cattle at this time, but we can utilize them cattle if we have something that goes awry, you know, that we're not planning on. That's just another option for us. We could potentially, you know, pasture that, increase, at least have some profitability on that acre, and it sets the stage for another crop that we can grow. So, and there again, I guess, you know, rye, this year our plan is actually to grow rye for seed. I think we all know that rye is certainly sought after, it's expensive, and that just gives us another opportunity to grow something else. So.
And I just want to back that up, and that if there is a way, and I know that just adds an extra layer of complexity in management, but if there is a way to integrate livestock, even if it's not your own animals, but grazing, even conventional farms, dairy heifers, which you can do, right, Carriot? You don't, it doesn't have to be organic cows on the field, because you can put conventional manure on the field. So if there's a conventional dairy farm that needs, you know, someone to help raise their dairy heifers, it makes the system work so much better, gives you so many other plan Bs. I mean, you can use that rye as forage. You can graze that rye. It's a source of fertility. So if there's any way to add, you know, beef cows, dairy heifers, it just is going to create so many other options and make so much more of a robust, sound system. I just highly, highly encourage you to, again, I know it's easier said than done, but it can be very, very valuable.
My rotation, subject to change, is corn, small grains, then I can get my cover crop of rye in, and then soybeans. That might change, but that's what it is now.
Okay, another question?
Yeah, well, it seems a few years ago.
No, Dylan's coming with the microphone.
Thank you. It seems a few years ago there was a effort to try to, with planting a fall small grain in March, to frost seed clover, which would be the understory as your wheat matured. And then that would be a cover crop for the fall. And that's not something I've heard of today. But in general, has that been a practice? And what has the results been?
We tried fall seeding clover in our sands, and it just hasn't worked. I think we've tried it 3 seasons in a row, and then we decided to not fall seed.
Jeff, you have a magic touch. Leia did that this year with oats, and I think we got some really good results if Leia's still in the room. I mean, definitely that's a very sound and reliable practice with you using red clover and frost seeding that into a winter wheat. But is Leia here? She may have stepped out. You can ask Leia though, Gil, because she did that, I think, with our oats, a couple different clovers, and it worked really, really nicely. We've got some nice stands afterwards.
We've been. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think there's other people in the audience who maybe have done that. Yeah, Jack?
That's the way we seed our rotational pastures.
That's your rotational pastures, is that winter frost seeded wheat?
Let me make a comment though. If you're going to incorporate livestock. Just if you know, this whole regeneration thing is really on the tip of our tongues and in the front of everybody's minds. And if you're going to reintroduce cattle back into the system, that's another management complication. Because if you have cattle and you're on rotational pastures or on cover crop ground, things like that, that ground's a lot more fragile. And there are going to be times when you don't want anything out there, like when we had a lot of rain this year. think about permanent pasture. Take your roughest ground. If you're going to manage livestock, have some permanent pasture. It's going to benefit your management a whole bunch and probably save your tail on some of your rotational ground.
So I got a question about, or a couple questions about using a land roller. So Megan, you said 5 to 8 bushel, and is that from at harvest? You can just get your draper head lower?
So when we did our first studies with the land roller, we counted branching. So we saw increased branching, and then when we were doing yield, we did have a lot, the combine operator said it was a lot smoother of a ride, but we also saw a lot less shatter. So we think it's a combination of more branching and less shatter.
And when did you land roll?
We land roll when the soybeans are up at V2 to V4 at the latest. We did some later rolling at V5, V6, and we saw yield loss.
And then the one thing that I think about land rolling, and I think Clint talked about this, is if you land roll like at, right after planting, then it seems to me like you're probably making a good, or you're making conditions good for your weeds to sprout, and so that's one thing that I've always kind of wondered about land rolling is, I guess this is the first time I've heard about land rolling, after the crop's up, which is interesting. And so I was always wondering about land rolling resulting in increased weed pressure, so.
Us to do this roller crimping after emergence was the land rolling results from Minnesota, which gave similar results to what Megan's describing, that actually rolling emerged soybeans at the V2 to V4 stage increases branching, and they actually see, beyond the other management benefits with the combine, some boosts in yields. So there's some pretty good research data to, again, there's other trade-offs that we're looking at there with passes over the field and equipment use and labor and all that stuff, but there's some good data out there.
We also land roll our snap beans after planting, either just before plant or just after planting, to help with cultivation methods. And I guess I've never looked to see if there's a weed difference, but something we could look at this next year, leave some unrolled passes and kind of look.
I would like to make one comment. We've been roller crimping for 3 years now, and if you're raising food grade beans, the seed coats are a lot cleaner on a rolled rye versus a cultivated system. Your samples just, the end user appreciates them a lot more.
Another question? And
I do want to make a quick comment on roller crimping or using non-fertilized rye, because we're a system. Did you want to get Jeff's?
Jeff is going to be leaving. Yes, let's give Jeff a hand. Thank you. We really appreciate you coming to the somewhat cold Midwest. And you're happy to go back to, well, we'll send it your way soon. Okay, Megan, I just wanted to say bye.
I just want to, anyone who's conventional, thinking about transitioning, or they have conventional and or transitional land, to try these techniques. A lot of the techniques we're trying on for organic, we will start to try it on our conventional land, and we're finding that a lot of our conventional practices are changing because of the trials we're running or what we're doing for organic. It also makes you feel a little more comfortable when you try it on your conventional land, because if it messes up, there might be a couple other fixes you can go back with. But we're finding it's more influencing us the other way, using less chemicals, less tillage, and more cover cropping in our conventional ground when we've been trying it on our conventional ground.
More questions? Questioned out? Well, we actually are supposed to end at 3:30, and we have a half an hour to go to the exhibit hall. The next session is new equipment technologies, which will be in this room, and organic certification basics in S, and that'll be me, and that starts at 4. And we will start right on time.